Yeah, I'm Mike Harris. I live in Atlanta, been here about 40 years. I've been collecting for about 25 years or so. Started out collecting mostly prints and kind of migrated to collecting original work. Served on a couple of boards and still do serve on a couple of boards around the arts and really enjoy that. And my hobby, I guess, is I'm an art broker as well. So I work with artists and collectors to help place work. And that brings me a great deal of joy, yeah. I think probably the biggest weak point is art education for collectors. I think most people in Atlanta, black, white, or other, don't really understand fine art. They want to have a pretty picture on the wall, and that pretty picture may be the same picture that 20 of their neighbors have. So I think the idea of educating people on what to collect, not specifically what pieces to collect, but what to look for in fine art is important and something that's missing. I think there's a couple of galleries that kind of focus on that, but for the most part, I think a lot of the gallery scene is more vanity collecting and vanity art, pretty pictures, essentially. So I think probably the biggest step is having that conversation with other collectors. There's a couple of artists that I'm sure you know, Kevin Cole, especially Kevin, who's really about helping people understand art and this idea of the salon, having these conversations around collecting. And we used to do that years ago. We had this group of collectors called Smart Collectors, and we would actually do studio visits and do these salon talks where we had 20 or 30 collectors in a room, or novices in a room, talking about collecting art and that sort of thing. And I think that was very helpful, very useful for a lot of us. We also did studio visits as part of that, and people would actually buy work. But we also thought a lot about how do we elevate this? How do we go from just Atlanta artists and get beyond that? And that created this whole movement of taking people up to the fine art show up in New York when that was happening, and doing road trips to Birmingham, Charlotte, and Arkansas to just see work. So that's a part of it. A big part of it is educating ourselves and doing it ourselves. I don't know if there's enough galleries in Atlanta at this point to help us along, because most of the galleries that were here 10 years ago are now gone. So there's a couple left, and some of those guys are trying to do some good work, but it becomes a part of us to do it. It's on us to do it. I would think the biggest thing that an artist can do is to focus on creating quality work, doing something that's unique. Don't do what you think is fashionable. There seems to be a lot of imitation. There's a lot of that. So do work that's unique. Do signature work. When I talk to artists a lot, one of the things I often say to them is, make sure that when someone sees your work, they know it's your work. Whatever that is. If you see a Richard Mayhew painting, no one has to tell you it's a Richard Mayhew painting, right? He has a signature, and he never has to put his name on it. When you see Freddie Sal's painting, most often you'll know that's a Freddie Sal's painting. I think that's the right way to do it. Do something that's unique. Do something that makes people see you in the work, and it has to be quality work. And there's a million amazing artists. How many of those artists are doing something really unique that makes them stand out from the crowd and makes them really collectible? Some of it is marketing. I think you have to be a part of the marketing scene. You have to think about how people are seeing me, where people are seeing me, how I want to be perceived. That's a big part of it. How do you want to be perceived? Do you just want people to buy your work because you want to have the money, or do you want to have people appreciate the work? And I think when you think about it from that perspective, having people appreciate it, you think more about what you're creating. I think you have to be very thoughtful about what you're creating and the commentary you're trying to make. What's the narrative? Yeah. I think there's things that can be done. A couple weeks ago, I was out in Seattle, and there's an artist collective. They have a gallery. And I think that's powerful. I think when you have artists who think about how do we get our work out? How do we get in front of people? What sort of business makes that happen? The galleries aren't picking me up. How can I make that happen? So I think you have to think about working with other artists. You have to think about what galleries you can partner with. And if there's not a gallery you can partner with, create it. That's what I saw in Seattle. I have friends that live up in Chicago, and they have a collecting group that does some of that for them. These guys come together once a month. They visit artists. They produced a book, maybe even a couple of books about their collections, and they're promoting their own artists. I think that's powerful. So the artists have to get about that part too. So yeah, you do have to create quality work, but you have to be a part of something bigger than yourself. You know, the groups like Spiral or Afrocobra, those guys studied art for sure, and they practiced their art for certain, but they also understood that they had to get in front of audiences. So they helped create shows for themselves to be seen. There's probably been 4 Afrocobra shows in the last year, and some of these artists are in their 70s or older. That's what it takes. You know, you have to get out in front of it. Create, absolutely, you have to create. Do something original, absolutely, you have to do something original. But the business of it is getting in front of people. We all know artists whose estates or someone else made fortunes on their art after they're gone because that entity sold the work, bought up the collection, and made millions on the collection when the family and the artist never really received much of anything out of it. I think once we think about what's the business of it, how we promote it, then we create our own audience. We don't wait for someone else to designate, here's who should be the one. What's missing is probably an organization of the collecting community, like what they have in Chicago. They have one up in DC, where the collectors are serious about the business of the art, where they want their work to appreciate in value. While they appreciate beautiful work, they also appreciate the value of the work appreciating, right? So I think that is something that's missing, and maybe that's something that we should do. I've been asked several times to engage with other collectors to do that, and we've had conversations, but we've not gotten off the ground. We should probably take it from the coffee shop and into really the boardroom of our minds and make something happen, because we're not the business of our art. Someone else is deciding who is the most collectible artist. Right. You know, there's a guy in New York who's essentially designating the artists who are worth collecting. And he does that based on whose inventory he can control. Is that fair? No. But that's business. Right. So we have to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. You know, we have to be a part of that. We have to make decisions about how we project our collections, because that's something that has to happen. We have to let people know that there are serious collectors in this market and all around the country, and that those collections have value, and great value, and they're varied. You know, so there are collections here in Atlanta that are staggering. I'm sure you know Carrie Davis, a beautiful collection, and it's not even about affluence, because Carrie Davis was a postman and has amassed one of the finest collections, I think, in the Southeast. And he's been very purposeful about it. I think we have to engage more with people like Carrie and Arthur and Jay and James and, you know, the Charleses. We have to collaborate with those people to get about the business of it, and we decide who moves forward, you know, and based on the quality of the work and not about us controlling the inventory.